I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for now. How many members of the committee are there? I'm just curious.
8?
Eight?
Does
Okay.
that sound right to you, Warren?
That is accurate. I went to go count. I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's
I
8
think
because,
8, yeah.
but others sometimes join too from the other committees or the
Gotcha. Is
board of
that is
the
that like a normal, like is there an average amount for community board committees or
You mean like across all boards or
yeah,
across
because like
ours?
I've
We
been to
have
committee meetings where there are like two people on them. And I'm just like
I think that on average, when you combine the committee members and other interested board members and members of the public, what
Mhm.
15 to 20 is who will pop on, and everybody comes on at like 6:32, like, and then people will come on as you're speaking. And we'll see if the very early days of January make a difference there, but that's typically what we see, anywhere 15, 20.
This is not related. Is anyone else? There's so many helicopters over where I am right now.
Are you in Brooklyn?
Yeah, I'm in Park Slope and there's just endless helicopters.
I know there was like some protests going on this morning um about Christine Ohm being here, but I don't know. I didn't think she was in Brooklyn. I thought she was in Manhattan, so I'm not sure.
I think maybe the helicopters are over Lower Manhattan. Just curious, just
Um,
asking around.
I hear them too. I'm in Lower Manhattan and they're pretty loud.
Yeah.
I'm probably the worst person to ask. I feel like all noises have become a blur to me now. So
Good evening.
hi, Eric.
How's it going?
Good,
Happy
good. I
New Year.
just realized I didn't say Happy New Year to everyone. This is my first time seeing y'all for the new year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Same back at you. Happy New Year, everyone.
It is 6:30, so kind of like what Sean hinted at, we typically give it 1 to 2 minutes and we'll begin. So maybe give it another minute and a half and we'll start the meeting.
I was saying to my neighbor, like, she said Happy New Year as well. And I was like, how long ago? It's New Year's Day. That was only 7 days ago. But my Lord, it feels like a year. Like, I mean, how can it actually only be the Thursday of the first week back? It feels like, man, that break is far behind. I
Literally,
don't
and I
mind it
never
though. I like January.
Never know when to stop saying Happy New Year. Like, do I say Happy New Year to you in February if it's the first time seeing you? But with that being said, it is now 6:32. We are going to kick off our meeting. This is a meeting of Topical Committee, Youth Service, Education, and Libraries. For Community Board 14, we are going to start 6:32. Um, I am Ornella Parker. I am one of the co-chairs, and I am here with my other co-chair, Eric. For today's agenda, we have two presentations followed by continual planning for our youth conference this year. Our first presentation will be from the Independent Budget Office. Hannah, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you'll be leading that for IBO. Following that, we have a presentation from New York City Public Library Action Network. And if I'm correct, that is Mandy. I think I saw Mandy's name on here. Yep. Hi, Mandy. So without further ado, let's jump into it. We'll start off with Hannah. I'll turn it over to you. The floor is all yours.
That sounds great. Hi everyone. I'm Hannah. I'm gonna share my screen. Just give me a thumbs up too if you can see my window. Um, you guys all see school budget workshop? Cool. Okay. Okay, so again, I'm Hannah. I am a community engagement specialist at IBO. I'll go a little more into my background in a couple of slides, but just to give you the agenda for tonight, we're first, Emma, my colleague, and I are going to just explain to people what IBO is. We are a pretty small city agency. We have around 50 people on staff, so a lot of times people haven't heard about us, or maybe this is just your first time attending one of our presentations. But just a quick refresher on who we are. We're then going to go into a review of the city budget timeline, and then we'll talk about how the Department of Education budget intersects with some key dates in that timeline. Specifically, we're really going to get to when individual schools get money from the Department of Education that fund their budget. And then we'll go into the meat of the presentation, which is what we call our budget scavenger hunt, where we're actually going to use a school in Manhattan and show you how you can pull up your own school budget if you're interested in doing so. Just figure out where the money from your school is coming from, as well as what it could be used for. And then we'll end with just a quick Q&A. And we're going to do like a quick abridged version of the presentation because I think we have around 30 minutes. But if I'm going too fast or if you have any questions, please feel free to just stop me. We're a pretty small group, so I don't mind that at all. And then also follow up with links in the slide deck with Shine as well. Cool. So just to go over some goals for tonight, the biggest goal of this is just to get parents, people in the community to really be able to, or just get comfortable with pulling up their own school budget, really understanding where the money from their school is coming from. So there are a lot of different sources of funding for the Department of Education. Some of the money for your school is coming from federal sources. So we'll talk about programs like Title I. Some of it is coming from the state and some of it is coming directly from the city. And we'll talk a little bit about that breakdown and what that means for people that are in charge of making decisions on how your school can spend its budget, which is usually your principal, as well as your SLT and other parents that are involved in the creation of the school budget. So we really developed this in mind because school budgets are one of the most publicly available budget information that New York City has. Anyone can feel free to pull up their school budget online, but it is kind of overwhelming, and so we wanted to simplify it and just get people comfortable with practicing pulling up their school budget and just get comfortable with like dipping their toes in if that's something they're interested in. So just to introduce ourselves before I hand it off to Emma to talk about the city budget timeline. Again, my name is Hannah. I've been at IBO for around a year and a half. Before I was a middle school teacher in the city. Love working with youth. We also have these types of workshops for high schoolers. So please feel free to reach out if you guys or anyone in your community is interested in this type of workshop for anyone of any age. And I'll hand it off to Emma to introduce herself.
Thanks so much, Hannah. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Gossett. I'm a lead budget and policy analyst on the education team at IBO. And I've been at IBO for around 2.5 years now. And my focus is on early childhood education, but we all do a lot of different education stuff. So. All right, so I'm going to start by explaining what IBO is. So IBO is a nonpartisan city agency. We were charter created by voters, and it was created so that the public has an independent source of budget information. So we are here to be a resource for the public and provide just answers to questions that the public may have about the budget. We don't decide the budget. We don't take positions on policy. So we really do take that independence seriously. And we focus on explaining how the budget works and how policy decisions have budgetary impact so that individuals can make their own decisions and choices. So our work throughout the year, we publish 3 charter mandated reports specifically on the budget. And we also do year-round reports on any number of topics. We answer questions from City Council and the public, and then analysts similar to myself, but on all different kinds of topics. We'll publish reports on education, housing, healthcare, city agency staffing, and many more. We also give testimonies at City Council hearings to answer questions that policymakers may have and provide an independent voice. And we give presentations like this and provide general resources to the public. So some of our work, I'm going to look at the education team's work specifically. So this is a recent report that we did on school buildings, and we were looking at accessibility gaps. So only 1/3 of city school buildings we found are fully accessible for students. And similarly, there's aging infrastructure and overcrowding and climate control issues. We looked at AC access as well. And so that's one example of a recent publication. Another example is my recent report on 3K and pre-K students, looking at utilization rates for programs. So looking at this chart right here shows different district seat utilization rates. And it looked at capacity, enrollment as well. And the impact, it really helps form outreach and discussions of seat reallocation and investment decisions. So it's really connecting the policy to budget and practice. The New York City budget timeline. So this is what Hannah mentioned earlier. It starts, well, technically the beginning of the fiscal year starts in July, right in the middle there. But this is the calendar year. So in January, which is actually where we are right now, we soon in the next few weeks or so, we'll get the preliminary budget. And then in April, we get the executive budget. In May and June is a key point for schools. So that's where funds for school-based programs are released and where planning begins for the new year using projected enrollment numbers. And then in September, the school year starts, and right before that, principals plan for the year using input from SLTs. And yeah, and then October 31st is the day that enrollment numbers are taken. So that's what real-time enrollment data is used. That's what the city or the DOE reports on. The Department of Education has funding from a lot of different sources. So city funds make up about 58% of the fiscal 25 budget. State funds, and as you can see, like this chart here shows that over time, how it really has varied. But that top line is the city funds. That middle line is state funds. So in that same year, fiscal 25, 36% of the budget was from the state. And then finally, 6% of the DOE's budget was from the federal funds. And as we know, there are ever-changing grant amounts and different funding streams and revenue sources. And so it really just, as you can see, over time just changes, and it will continue to change. And this is the budget scavenger hunt.
Yep.
So
So
I'm
we're
going
gonna
to hand it off to
now,
Hannah.
yeah. So we're gonna get into kind of the meat of our presentation, which is again using that school in Manhattan to show you an example of a school budget. And this is again something you can do for your own school if you're interested. But just to give you an overall picture of the Department of Education's budget, we're primarily going to be looking at this dark blue portion, which is K through 12 schools and instruction, because that is the portion of the money that is going directly to schools. There's also other proportions of the DOE budget that we see here, like employee benefits and pensions, or charter schools or central administration that are they are part of the DOE budget, but they're not going to schools. Those are things that are centrally administered. And so those are not really funds that we're going to be really talking about during this presentation, because we're primarily going to be focusing on how does that money from the DOE budget go into your individual school budget. So we're going to be looking again just at this dark blue part. And that dark blue part is going to pay for things that we typically think about running a school with. So administrative and teacher salaries, paying for programs and services, and then paying for other things that your principal might spend funds on, like library books, like supplies, and like textbooks. And fun fact, I also just found out from a principal that you also need to pay for air conditioning repairs when that breaks. So I guess things like that are also included in the direct school allocation budget. So let's just go over who is in control of the school budget. This might be a review for many of you guys, but just to go over again, the principal is the largest kind of manager of your school budget. The role of the principal is really to take funding from the DOE that is allocated to their school, to consult with their school leadership team, which is usually made up of sometimes teachers that are elected. Actually, our assistant director, Julia, was a high school teacher, and she was on her SLT because she was elected to it for 5 years. And there are also sometimes students on an SLT, and then parents as well. So really people that are active in the school community. Their role is to work with the principal to make funding or budget decisions and align the school budget with the comprehensive educational plan. The next, and we kind of talked about this already, is the school leadership team, but they also have permission to dispute decisions if they feel like the decisions that principals are not aligned with the comprehensive education plan, and those complaints can be made to the superintendent. And just to round us off, we have the superintendent. And so they're kind of the person that will make the final call if the SLT is in dispute with the principal's justification. And this is all just pulled directly from the chancellor's regulation from the Department of Education website. So those are the people that are in control of the school budget. Next, we're going to go look at a tool that you can all find online on the New York City Public School website. And this lives under the Financial Data and Reports, really fun name, part of their website. And we're specifically going to be looking at a tool that they actually just came out with last year, and it's called Your School Budget at a Glance. So this is going to give you really helpful information, which I'll show you in the next slide. But it'll show you about how much your school receives from different sources. And it just gives you a really great breakdown of how your principal can spend money from all these different sources as well. So again, if you would like to visit this website, it's available on New York City Public Schools under Financial Data and Reports. And I'm specifically going to be looking at school budget at a glance for this presentation, but there's also a lot of other helpful resources on the page as well. So this is school budget at a glance, and I'm using the Clinton School in Manhattan. And so in order, if you want to follow along on your computer, or if you're interested in exploring this later, you're just going to find your school using your school's 4-digit DBN number. So here for the Clinton School, because it's located in Manhattan, the DBN number is going to start with M, and then it's just going to have another 3-digit number that's associated with the school. So the Clinton School is a high school. It serves grades 6 to 12. And already at first glance, it's giving me some really helpful information. So it's telling me the total enrollment of the school. It also tells me the total amount of school funding that the school receives. And then it gives you just some really helpful demographic information. So it'll give you how many students in the school have economic needs. For this school, it's around 28%, which is pretty low because we are comparing it to a citywide average of 74%. But it just also has like some really great information for anyone that's interested in exploring more information about the demographic makeup of their school. So it'll tell you percentage of English language learners, percentage of students with disabilities, and some other great demographic information as well. So this is the overall look at school budget at a glance. We're next going to go a little more in depth with this. So we're going to explore um, how much, we're going to look at something called school allocation memorandum. So is this a term that anyone is familiar with? Sean is nodding her head. School allocation memorandums are basically just documents that the Department of Education gives to your principal, and they explain how money for schools can be spent. There's a ton of school allocation memorandums, so I'm just going to go over kind of the ones that schools usually get money or get the largest proportion of money from, but there's around 80 school allocation memorandums. So there's a ton, and they're also added throughout the year. So they're added for things like class size, or they're added when there's something like the cell phone ban last year. So they're added to school budgets whenever there's a new need that arises to increase the school budget throughout the year. So again, there's a ton of them, and I'm not going to explore all of them because they're very dense documents. But I'm just going to go over kind of the ones that you might hear of, or the ones that might be most significant to your school. So just to break up school budget categories, I'm going to be using a term called fair student funding next. Has anyone heard of this term before? Yep, so a couple of you guys are nodding your heads. Fair student funding is the largest school allocation memorandum. So it makes up the majority of funding for most public schools. Most public schools get around 2/3 of their budget from fair student funding. And fair student funding is a formula. So fair student funding is based on per pupil. So, for example, if Emma enrolled in the Clinton school, she would get the amount of money associated with her needs based on this formula, and it would follow her based on what school she enrolled in. So, if she transferred from the Clinton school to a school in Brooklyn, that money would follow her to the school that she enrolled in next. So, fair student funding, again, is one source of funding, but it is really tied to enrollment, and that's why it's very, very important how many students are enrolled in a school because it's really tied to how large their budget is going to be. Does that all make sense to everyone? Okay. So we just touched on fair student funding. There is a 10-page document. If any of you guys, actually, it's more than 10 pages. It's like 100 pages if anyone wants a deeper dive. But there's also other funding. So other funding comes from the source of state, local, and federal funds, and these funds are usually more restricted. So for fair student funding, once those funds are given to your principal, they usually have a lot more discretion in how they can use them. So they can go out and hire a Spanish teacher or an English teacher. There's not as many restrictions on how they can use those funds. But other sources of funding are usually pretty restricted. And so that means they can only be used for certain types of students or certain types of programs. And we'll give a couple examples of those as well. So I talked about first student funding pretty extensively already, so I'm not going to touch on it too much. But just to give you an example of what this looks like on the school budget at a glance website, the Clinton School was receiving around $11 million from fair student funding. So again, out of 13 million, that's a pretty significant chunk of their budget. And again, it's really just tied to how many students are in a school, as well as what the needs of those students are. And so, for students with that fall into these different categories, um, such as being qualified for academic intervention, being an English language learner, having an IEP, being a student in temporary housing, being a student in a high needs school, or being a student in a portfolio school. These are all things that would qualify a student to receive more funding through this formula. Yep. Any questions or any comments? I know it's a lot of information, so feel free to jump in if there are any comments.
I did have a quick question about this slide.
Mhm.
The temporary housing in the fair student funding and the high needs, those are new as of when?
These are new as of fiscal year 2024, and so there was a really big push because there are so many students in temporary housing to add additional funds for this group of students. And so that was the first year that that new weight was added. It is like a little bit debated as like if is it a good amount of money or not. For example, if you are a special needs student, usually you get a weight of around 1.2 additional funds. And for students in temporary housing, it was only 0.12. So it's a little bit debatable as to like the significance of the funding, but there was funding added to support students in temporary housing around 2 years ago.
Thank you.
Any other? Sorry.
No, that was me. I was just saying thank you. Good context.
Cool. Any other questions before I move on? Cool.
Yes.
Yep.
Hey, yeah, so thank you for the presentation. And so two quick questions. For this slide, what is the definition of a high need school?
So a high needs school, there's three different categories that the Department of Education places as high needs, and they basically are taking the top 700 schools that have this most students in temporary housing, the most English language learner students. There's like five different categories of need that they qualify for, and it's very complicated, and I could follow up with an article that we wrote that explains like what this is, but they're basically just like categorizing the schools, the top 700 schools with the highest needs and giving them additional funding. And so for category one, they were getting around 500 additional funds per pupil. For category two of need, that it was around 340. And for category three, it was around $170 per pupil. And that's just based on, again, how many English language learners, how many students in temporary housing, all those different categories. And I'll send Sean our article about it as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that explanation. And then the second question I have too to tie things together
Oh, yeah,
is with the school
there it is.
allocation.
Emma just sent it in the chat too.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Emma. And then my second question, like you mentioned with the measurement for the high need schools and also the school allocation memorandums, you said it was the Department of Education that provides that. For clarity, do you mean the New York State or the federal Department of Education?
That provides the formula for FSF.
Yeah, the formula for the student in high need school, and then also back at the school allocation memorandum, you mentioned there were like 80 classes or so, and it
Yeah,
was the Department of Education. And so is that the New York State or the federal one that gives those memorandums?
this is coming from the New York City Department of Education.
Okay, it's the
Um,
city level. Okay, thank
mhm.
you. Okay,
And then
okay, great.
specifically for these weights, these are voted on
Mhm,
by the panel for education policy each year. So if there are any changes, like the students in temporary housing, that's something that they would
mhm.
decide on.
Got it. Okay, so all this guidance is coming from the city. It's pretty local. It's not like, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for that clarity. I appreciate that.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I know it's a lot of information too, so we're a pretty small group. Feel free to jump in whenever. So I'm just gonna give a couple examples now of different SAMs. The next one I'm going to talk about is Title One, just to give you an example of a source that is coming from the federal government. Title One, you've probably all heard of this program. This is a federal program that's meant to support Title One schools. Most of the schools in New York City are Title One schools. And the distinction is that they serve a high population of low income students. And these funds are restricted and they're specifically meant to be used for things like counseling, for parent engagement, and then also for resources for students in temporary housing. The other important thing to note is that for this source of funding, Title I actually gives schools funding, additional funding for students in temporary housing. So for any student in temporary housing, whether or not you're in a Title I school or not, you're going to receive around an additional $1,000 for each student in temporary housing that enrolls in your school. And this money is actually really, really specific. It's meant to be used for things like paying for field trips for those students, paying for sanitary, like things that those students may need, paying for other resources that those students may need. And those are all outlined in the school allocation memorandum as well. Next, I think I'm handing it off to Emma to talk about class size.
Perfect. So this
Dude,
is another oh,
if I could, Emma, I'm sorry,
yeah,
Hannah, if
no, go
I
for it.
could ask a question. One thing I'm curious about as a parent, my kids are in Title I schools, and we often get like a form that we have to fill out, sometimes twice, three times a year, asking about income level and housing. And so obviously, like the Title I, there's a self-reporting aspect from parents as to, to identify um, income levels, but also and housing as well. We get questionnaires about that. I guess my question is: is all of the DOE data on students self-reported by parents? Like, are there schools? I don't know. I worry often about, there's a lot of parents, especially in the schools where the parents are all working, many jobs. Um, so I'm just curious about the collection of the data and how the DOE is determining the student's status.
Emma, would you actually know more about that
Yeah,
then? Yeah.
Yeah.
happy to say. Yeah, so a lot of a lot of or some data is certainly self-report, but it's also part of the school's role to partner with parents and like make sure those forms are filled out to the best of parents' abilities, especially like with language access. I know that that's been a big push to really help make things more accessible. So a lot of data is self-report, but there are other data that is not. So for example, IEP data, that is like a creation created by like with it in partnership with schools and parents and students. So like, and then that can then be used to like verify some of the self-reported data. So all of these systems speak to one another. And so the answer is yes and no. And it's really varied.
So but the primary way of collecting the data is self-report then. It's cross-reference, but it is primarily self-report.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot
Okay.
of data. So like there's like a lot of different things that are collected differently. Enrollment data, for example, like that's like attendance, and that is school reported, or
Mm,
teacher reported. Um,
mm.
yeah,
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We could definitely get back to you on that question too, because I'm
for
curious
sure.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at my school, language access is a huge issue, and so, sometimes the documents are not all translated, or we have to request additional ones, and there's hurdles for that, and so there's always a concern, and when there's a lot of like alarming, urgent messages from the school that these things need to be collected, and I'm just I think about that. How many schools lose funding because their data isn't reflected because of the difficulty in the collection? So that's just something I think about.
Yeah, definitely. And as somebody who uses the data to like inform research and analysis, I too think about self-report and like reliability. So definitely an important thing to consider. Perfect. We will continue on if nobody else has any more questions. Um, This is another SAM. This is the class size reduction planning SAM. So this is the most this is a recent SAM. It's a new one for fiscal year 26. And the funds are specifically intended to help reduce class sizes. And those funds are primarily used for teacher hiring. And class size is a new state law, and it is a year-over-year introduction. So basically, it's a 5-year rollout, and by the end, you have to be fully compliant with the following guidelines. So it's for grades K through 3, it's 20 students. Grades 4 through 8, it's 23 students, and grades 9 to 12, it's 25 students. And so schools have 5 years to get to that. And after the first year, it was 20% compliance, then 40% compliance. We just completed our second year, and we second year, third year. Wow, third year. And we did reach the compliance thresholds, and so this year, at the end of this year, we have to reach 80% compliance. Um, so in fiscal year 2026, 750 schools were awarded funds based on how many teachers they needed to meet that compliance, and the DOE distributed $458 million to hire 3,704 teachers. And there is a whole table of which schools were eligible. They had to apply and then were selected in partnership between the UFT, the DOE, and I think the principals union as well. Um, yeah, but this is fully public, and so you can see what your school got specifically for class size.
May
Sean,
I
did you have a
jump in
question?
with yeah, if we could pause on this one for a minute, because I know this
Yeah.
one was a really big one in our district, and I believe that IBO directly assisted some of the organizers at PS 889, which borders our district. And so there were a couple of things that seemed to be hurdles for the schools. One is, I think that the superintendent sort of figured out, you said it was like a multi-year rollout, and so which schools got the first year rollout and which ones got the second it seemed to be at the superintendent level. I'm not sure about that. And then another hurdle was whether or not there was actual physical space in the schools to split up a class into, a second or third class. But MS 88 had the students and had the application. So you just said that this is public information, but it looks like it's only the only information about what schools got is what's public. What schools advocated for is somewhere else. And so I'm wondering if there's a way to look at what schools wanted and said they could accommodate versus this information about what they received.
Yeah, I mean, what we know is that 800 schools applied, or around 800, and 750 were given the funds. So that probably means like a majority were, but then obviously around 50 did not get the funds. I'm not, we could probably like get our assistant, I could probably ask our assistant director as to if she had any more information on why schools didn't get awarded the funds. The law also does mandate that the schools with the highest percentage of high income students are prioritized, so that could have been a reason. But we can definitely look into it too and try to give you a better answer. But it's also unclear to us sometimes as well.
And
Yeah.
then one follow-up question on who sets the formula for the SAMs and where they come from. Even though it's the city that kind of administers them, aren't they sometimes like the C4E funding it's administered by the city or was decided upon, but that was in negotiation with the state.
Mhm.
So are even though the city administers them, are they it's not like a free for all and the city gets to do whatever they want, right? There's a lot of mandates and they have to meet from the state. Am I right on that?
Yeah, if you look at the SAM for contracts for excellence, there's I think like categories of which New York City can spend the contracts for excellence fund. Right now, they're prioritizing class size reduction, so hiring new teachers. But there's also things like adding an AP class, or adding like education alternatives, or adding after school tutoring. But there is a pretty comprehensive list, like you're saying, for how they can spend those funds as well.
Thanks.
Perfect. And then one last thing on class size is that I put our latest report on class size in the chat. Um, Anyway, so there is a list of SAMs by category for fiscal year 2026, and it's on the NYCPS website, and they're added throughout the year, so they really do stay updated. And in fiscal year 2025, there were a total of 89 SAMs. Other SAM examples, Summer Rising, pre-K and 3K in district schools, counseling initiatives, Civics for All, and District 75, which is funded separately. So SAMs really tell you about what your school is spending money on, and the school budget at a glance really gives you a great idea of your school budget and looks at the last year. And another thing that you can look at to really understand how your money is being allocated is looking at Galaxy allocations. And so it's on the same page as that school budget at a glance. You can see that it's the first thing, and Galaxy is the third thing. And it shows you how much money a school gets for the current year. So school budget at a glance is last year, and this is this year. So principals use it to track and manage their own budget, and it's updated periodically and can give you a better sense of what your school budget looks like now, especially because enrollment really does change. And so looking at last year's may not necessarily inform 100% what this year's is going to look like. This is an example of a Galaxy budget spending detail. It's a lot of numbers. Don't feel too overwhelmed, but it's basically just showing what the budget's being spent on. These first two things are titles, so you can see head of school and assistant head of school. These aren't just like salaries, but these are like everything included. And then you can also see the types of teachers on the right. So you can see for the grades, on the left, there's pre-K, K through 2, and you can see what kind of class and service and teacher. So there's a whole class teacher, an ICT, SPED teacher, a self-contained special educator. And so it really gives you classroom teacher details. Yeah. So those are a few of our budget resources, and now we're really just here to answer any questions you might have. And also we can follow up with literally any question you might have. A lot of our research is just comes because people had really good questions and it turned into really cool research. So we highly recommend you just ask us a question. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming. I just want to say that this is really informative, and I'm looking forward to exploring the galaxy of my kids' schools, wandering the galaxy. Yeah, so if people have questions, that's great. I do have one question. I know in the timeline, I was a teacher as well, so I have intimate knowledge of the mid-year adjustment and that impact on us. This past year, they didn't the mid-year adjustment didn't happen. They didn't adjust down. So if your enrollment went down this past year, I'm aware they did not. There was times when I was teaching where we would lose some budget for the rest of the year. We'd have to figure stuff out. But I think it was you guys are shaking your head, so you know about this. I'm curious if this is more than 1 year, and is this going to happen again, or are we like at the end of that mid-year adjustment grace
That's a
period?
great question. So those are called hold harmless. So it basically means, so if your enrollment increases and you need more funding, they will fund that. But if your enrollment decreases and you were counting on that money to serve the students that you do have, even though your enrollment decreased, they hold your budget harmless and they do not reduce it. That is not a forever thing. It is a recognition of difficult times, I think. And that's great. Hannah just put in a Chalkbeat article about hold harmless. It doesn't happen every year. It has happened a number of times. Don't quote me on, but I think since the pandemic, it's been happening. Because I think COVID really spurred the sense of uncertainty in budgets. And so since then, they've been holding schools harmless at the mid-year adjustment. But they keep saying they won't. So like this past year, they said that they wouldn't, and then they did. So they always say they won't, so we never really know. But I anticipate it can't go on forever.
Okay. Yeah, I know that part of that was because of we had the migrant surge, and then as people, shelters closed or people were forced to move, and it was big, major enrollment fluctuations. So I feel like that was one of the reasons they did it this past year.
That was a huge reason. Yeah, for the last like 3 years, 2 or 3 years, I think that's been the main reason. And then, yeah.
Hold harmless. Okay, thank you. Other questions, board members? Any questions?
Sasha has her hand up, or yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Um, I just wanted to ask a question about the class size funding, right? So did you mention it's a year to year or a 5-year budget that is allocated to that to be able to afford this kind of rollout? How does the rest supposed to work or look like? Just like what's the future of that? Like, is that something that could be set in stone, or is it something that could, the money could run out? Because I'm just trying to understand from like the point of like how is it funded? Because it's such a huge chunk of money, and I'm very happy that lots of schools are having small sizes. And I definitely did hear, especially in our district, many schools who would love to have more teachers, but they just have no space to break down the classes for sure, like 889 and other bunch of schools. So that I'm just curious, like, is this something that's supposed to be a long term or something that we have for now that might be taken away?
That's a great question. So, a lot of the funding for that is state. And the city also funds some of it, but basically, there are a lot of issues. There are just physically space concerns, as you mentioned.
Mhm.
And so some of the schools for this past cycle, for this third year, did get an exemption from if they specifically had space constraints, and I believe they had to also have a plan in place with the school construction authority, the SCA, to have a new space planned to be able to fit those students. But certainly, we have heard from teachers, we have heard from community members that people are concerned that there just isn't space. There aren't enough teachers to hire to fill the staffing requirements. And that's definitely something we're looking at. I mean, IBO estimated that we'd have to hire another something like 20,000 teachers to like really meet the mandate. And so we're definitely monitoring this. And but so far it is just a consistent funding stream. But once we reach compliance, that like we have reached compliance, and so that theoretically would be in 2 years. And so I know, I mean, the new chancellor um, has doubled down on his commitment to that. So we do expect them to move on this and really commit to making sure there is enough space for that and there are enough teachers. I know that they're partnering with CUNY and SUNY to try to help with workforce programs, to try to bulk up their workforce. But it's definitely a concern for a lot of people.
Right. But then also, does this mean that the state's budget could like run out of money and just like not be able to afford this program? That's what I'm trying to understand, because like DOE, the funds are limited, but at the same time, DOE spends over $42,000 per student per year. So it's a significant amount of money, because obviously like the union employees cost a lot of money as well, and there's a lot of different costs that go into, supporting children, even though many schools still don't have enough funds and like parents have to help buy paper towels and stuff like that. So I'm trying to picture, like, is this something that communities should be hoping for and expecting for in the years to come, as in like this is the new norm, or this is like for now and until the money runs out and then we'll go back to the regular sizes again? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, great
I
question.
just like I was trying to understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 more years of funding, and that's probably all they have like
Okay.
really committed to, because at that point you will be at capacity, and the added costs. But I'm not really sure. Like, the state may need to continue helping fund those positions. We don't really know. We'll just kind of have to
Okay.
see if they can hire the staff for that. So.
Yeah. Because, yeah, that and the fact that, now there's like the new push for twos program, the 3K is still a huge, has such a long way to go. So I'm trying to picture where all the funds are coming from and what does that look like just for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the city's budget, or sorry, the New York City DOE's budget is
Hmm.
around $40 billion. And so all in all, like, the specific funds for class size reduction planning are a little bit of a drop in the bucket.
Hmm.
Um, And so, I mean, they're not nothing, obviously, but there's so many different revenue sources that one source, like quote unquote, running out of money is a little like, it's unlikely that that would impact so significantly the remainder of the city's budget or the state's budget.
Mhm. Got it. Thanks.
Of course.
I have one more question. Is there a place you can look at all the SAMs? I mean, you guys have just like where,
Yes.
could you, yeah, just
I will
drop in
find
a
the link
link.
for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Cause yeah.
And I think Deborah has her hand up for a question. Deborah, do you still have a question?
I sent the Sams in the chat too, but if you're interested in like just the ones that your school are getting, you can just I would start with that maybe like go to your school budget at a glance, just see what your school is getting, and then they link from the school budget at a glance to the document too. So it's kind of an easier way than going through all of them as well.
Oh, great. So you can find the SAMs from that page,
Mhm.
from the school page. That's great. I see Nikki has a hand up, and we do have Deborah. Nikki, do you want to go?
Yeah, I have two slightly different, more general questions. I think I was just using the QR code you showed to scan your website. And how does the IBO sort of decide on what are the hot topics that you're going to report on? Like, so you have a very snazzy report name like painting the city budget, looking at what's sort of your process on figuring out where to put your focus, and then totally different, but it's great. Thank you so much for being at this community board meeting, which is really helpful. Do you guys have an engagement strategy that specifically maps like PTAs or something like that? Because I'm thinking I go to a chat and chew with the principal of my school on a fairly regular basis. And like, possibly I could imagine a principal being like, wow, this is a lot of information for all the parents to have, right? But I wonder if there's a strategy from your engagement office to engage with PTAs where this might be a really interesting thing for someone in a PTA meeting to see. Yeah. So how do you decide on hot topics? And what is your engagement strategy with sort of some of the parent governance structures within the public school system?
Perfect. Hannah, I'll answer the first one if you want to answer the second. Perfect. So in terms of how we decide on the projects and the reports that we do, it's like I said earlier, like it's really questions that we get. So questions from the public. I mean, I say that like jokingly that 60% of my job is reading the news because I just like need to stay informed and like keep updated on what really is happening in the city. And we each have our focus as an analyst. So my focus is on early childhood education. So today was a big day for me. I watched the Hochul announcement. So I know that there's like 3K and pre-K and 2K in discussion. And so based on the things that I'm hearing, that is what we report on. And then we get specific questions sometimes, or there's a question that comes up because we see that there's an issue that we're hearing about. Yeah, so I hope that helps.
Yeah, as for our engagement strategy, we actually only have two community engagement specialists. It's myself and one other person. So we haven't had the capacity to do outreach to individual PTAs, unfortunately. But we are focusing on kind of like more district wide. So we're doing like community boards because that does reach, like a whole district as opposed to just like an individual school. But if you are interested in coming, we do also take like presentation requests. And so if people reach out to us and they have a specific request, we do try to honor that. But we also try to focus on doing like wider groups too. So we host like IBO school budget workshops that people can come to every couple of months. But yeah, it's just kind of a capacity thing too, because it's just myself and one other person giving these presentations, but happy to if you reach out.
I'll jump in with a really quick thanks for this and for all you do because I use your reports for a lot for backing up our district needs statement. I read your testimony more than you might know, and it's always really valuable. And Shinrei has been really great at keeping the outreach alive. I think we're going to be working on some presentations for future of community boards as well. The only thing I will say is I wish I hope, and I will bring this request up the flagpole, but the role of community boards in that how the New York City budget is made used to be in there, and it isn't anymore. So if you would, we work really hard, and I think you may have dipped in on some of our budget consultations with city agencies and saw us working hard. So I hope that returns to that publication because we play a role, and I think it will keep, especially with the Office of Mass Engagement established, that maybe people, if they know that down at the ground level they have some input opportunities, we can all work together on getting some of that funded. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so
I
much.
appreciate that, Sean. Yes, the Office of Mass Engagement sounds like a beautiful community information weapon. So that's wonderful. Deborah, if you are the last one, if you still have the question, I saw your back on. If you want
Yes,
to go, you're the last word.
thank you for such a great presentation. My concern, well, not really a concern. I just wanted to know about you know how the kids were receiving, the parents were receiving checks, monies for like at the end of the school year each year. Um, I'm not sure if it was tied to the lunch. This occurred after COVID, and the last couple of years they got it. So I'm wondering, is it going to continue when you're looking in at the budget?
If you guys,
Is money for school lunch going to continue, or you say parents were
no,
getting money?
I think Deborah, are you talking about they gave kids cards. It was during COVID, because kids weren't able to access lunch. They actually distributed cards, and there was like they worked like SNAP
Oh,
benefits.
I
There was
give
like
up. Yeah, like SNAP benefits or something.
yeah, that happened like 2 years, but it didn't happen this past year, Deborah.
Oh,
But yeah,
okay.
No, it
All
did
right. So
happen
Yeah,
this
I don't know.
Yep.
oh, you did? Okay.
They
So
sent
I
out
was
like
wondering
letters.
if it's gonna be a continuing thing going forward, or there's a cutoff point.
I'm not sure. I actually didn't know that was a thing. I'm going to look into it.
Mm, mm.
It was I think it was Title I schools. All the students got a SNAP benefit card. It was like for like $400, something like
Wow.
that,
Yeah,
for purchasing yeah,
food.
food, for
All
purchasing
right.
food.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming to Community Board 14 and sharing out. This recording will be on the CB14 website, so other people will be able to access it. We can, if others want to direct others to this resource, they can. And your info's here, so people are encouraged to reach out to you.
Perfect.
Great
Thanks so
You're
much.
up.
meeting.
Thank you, guys. You're welcome to stay, or you can move on to the next. That's fine. We have up next, Mandy is here from the campaign for library funding. And Mandy, we want to turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Welcome.
So I am here as a part of NYC Plan, which stands for the Public Library Action Network. I'm a resident of the district, and I'm here. This will be pretty brief. It's not a big presentation. This is more of a announcement / ask for help from all of my lovely neighbors. We are a group of volunteers that are committed to supporting our New York City public libraries because we believe they are wonderful, beautiful community spaces, and we want to make sure that they have everything they need. And right now, we started this campaign, I believe at the end of October, and we're going to be going through all of budget season. So it's pretty appropriate that we started this meeting talking about the budget because that is also our focus for the next couple of months. And what we're doing is we're asking folks to call their city council members and urge them to support allocating 0.5% of the New York City budget for our New York City libraries. So that doesn't seem like a whole lot. And we came really, really close last year. I think we funded our libraries at like 0.47%. So we're almost there, but we're really trying to get to that 0.5% mark this year. And so we have created, and I'm just going to drop a link in the chat here. There is an open letter on our website that you can sign. It's pre-written, so you just have to sign it and it will go to your city council member. We are also running a campaign every Wednesday where we're asking folks to call their city council members and ask them to support 0.5% of the budget, or allocating 0.5% of the budget to our public libraries. And we are organizing folks by city council district to actually do in-person meetings with their council members to talk about the importance of libraries. So we have a ton of resources on our website. There's a script on our website to call your council member. There's the open letter I mentioned. And then we also have a Google form if folks are interested in participating in an in-person meeting. They can fill that out, and Dylan, who works with us, will reach out and connect you to folks, to organize that meeting with your city council member. So I'm just here to sort of let folks know what we're doing, and ask that you participate. The resources are on the website. You can also follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky. We're trying to really rally a lot of support, make a lot of phone calls, send a lot of letters, and get really loud to defend our public libraries. And I should mention, we are not affiliated with the libraries. We're just volunteers who love our libraries and use them and want to protect them. So if anyone has questions, I'm happy to take them. I will also drop my email address in the chat if you want to send me a note, but everything is on our website and on our social media, as I mentioned.
Thank you, Mandy, neighbor. Appreciate what you're doing. Did you say people on your website, if people want to volunteer to be part of your campaign or learn more about it, there's a sign up?
Yeah, I
Nikki already
believe
did it.
so.
Nikki's on it.
Yeah, wow, go Nikki. Yes, I believe so. We do have a newsletter that gets sent out every so often, and we meet every month and we alternate virtual and in-person meetings. So when we meet in person, we do meet in Brooklyn. We meet at the Prospect Heights Library, which is just at the end of the B41, not too hard to get to from our district. And then we meet virtually on the off meetings or off months. Sorry. So if folks are interested, yeah, you can email. I think there's a general email address on the website, but I'll look again and drop that in the chat, because we actually do have a meeting coming up this Sunday at 2 p.m. and this one is virtual. So folks who are interested in getting just more involved in what we're doing in general, that meeting is open to folks, and you just have to email us and we'll send you the Zoom link.
That's great. Do you have questions? I see Ornella and Sean. Go ahead, again.
Yes. Hi, Mandy. I too really love my libraries. On your website, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought you said there's an open letter to send to city council, but I'm looking on the website, I see only a letter to mayoral candidates. Is that the same thing?
Nope. That's, if you go to the link just under that, where is it? Now I can't find it. I will find you the link. Sorry
Okay.
about that. I thought they
No
put
worries.
the city council letter, but I'll find that and drop that in the link. We did have one for all the mayoral candidates. Obviously, we all know that was a hot topic the last few months, but we do have a city council one, so I'll drop that link. Unless Nikki beat me to it. Nikki, are you also an NYC plan member? Do we just not know each other? You're really on top of
No,
it
I'm
here.
not. I hope I filled out the right thing. There's right below it says put pressure on city council, and
Okay.
there was a Google form. That's what I filled out. I hope I did the right thing.
I think that's for if you're interested in being connected with others to an in-person meeting.
Okay.
But I'll find the
And this is
letter
why one
link.
shouldn't multitask, but I will check on it. And clearly I'm enthusiastic. So thank you, Mandy. Send me forms to fill out. And yeah.
Okay. Famous last words, but I will.
Mandy, I have a question about the budget request. Is that inclusive of capital, or is this a request for the expense budget only?
I think this is the expense budget only.
Okay. And do you know if the 0.47, that is almost 0.5, if that's inclusive of Reso C money from council members, or is it just the straight tax levy budget from the city?
I believe it's just the straight budget from the city. Yeah.
Cool, because that might mean that it could be argued that if they would just baseline this into the budget, then the city council members wouldn't have to take their councilmanic funding and give it to libraries. They could turn it over to community-based organizations.
Yeah, we would love that. And,
Yeah.
part of, I wasn't here to talk about this today, but part of what we're trying to do with NYC Plan also is connect with our community boards, and just like talk to them what's happening. I know that's not exactly what you brought up, but we're trying to sort of come up with a number of different strategies to really up that funding. Part of the reason why I wanted to be at this meeting tonight.
The community board district needs statement always says, we always check in with our local public libraries and then library, from on high about what needs are. And we're always supportive of anything asked of us, but it's mostly capital from our branch libraries. They're mostly asking for their HVAC systems and whatnot. So I'll take time to explore your page and dig a little bit deeper. But thank you very much for your patience and for this information.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and I will find that letter link and drop that in the chat real quick.
And we'll get everything all up on our website as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Man, I just was briefly looking at the how to engage with your community board page on your website. And one thing I would suggest, we have the full board meeting on Monday. All community boards have the full board meeting, and you can sign up. Anybody can sign up as a public speaker at the end. So at the end of the meeting, everybody can have 2-minute slots, or 3. I think it's 2, 3 minutes. But it's actually great because there's a lot of, at the community board meetings, there's obviously a lot of people who care deeply about the community, and but there's always officials, elected officials or their staff are always there, so you can speak directly to those people and then chat with them afterwards because they're around. So that might be another thing to add to, not just around the district needs time, but you just come by the meetings and sign up to speak.
Yeah, that is on my list. I definitely want to get there.
All
And
right.
I will have to say, like, just a small aside, and this is no shade to any other community board, but as we've been talking at NYC Plan and other members have gone to their community boards, folks are like having trouble accessing the boards or like figuring out the best way to like plug into them. So I will say I really appreciate like CB14's newsletter and website because it does make it really easy to find everything in the YouTube page and all of that. So yes, I will get to one of those meetings.
Shout out to the staff at CB14. Send those kudos.
That's helpful feedback, but also let us know if you need help tracking anybody down, because some boards also they don't even have space right now. They're not working out of offices. So, very happy to help track people down. And I just want to say this, our chair is here so he can jump in if I don't say it the right way, but because this is a remote meeting, because of the constraints of open meetings law, this committee can't tell you tonight that the board will officially jump on as a board. Clearly, you have individuals that in their individual capacity are supportive, but for the board to take action as a board, that idea would have to come forth in a motion at the full board meeting on Monday when we're meeting in person. So I don't want you walking away from this thinking that it didn't happen. There's a reason why, but it doesn't mean that it won't or that it can't.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm just happy to be here and be able to chat a little bit about what we're doing. I have no expectations. We're just really trying to like get the word out there and try and get as many people involved. And I will say one of the other things we do is we host what are called people's assemblies, where we do like education around like how the library is funded, what libraries do in New York City, and then sort of like talk to people about what would you like to see your library doing and all of that stuff. We hosted one in Brooklyn last year, Manhattan last fall, and Queens is next. But I can certainly send the information. I know it won't be in our district, but I can send that along. I think our next one's going to be in February, just so folks are sort of interested in what we're getting up to.
All right. Any other questions for Mandy?
No questions. Just Mandy, thank you. I'm Carl. I'm the chairperson, and yeah, what Sean said is exactly that. And the last thing is just if you didn't know Hannah already from IBO and Emma, well, now you do. And so if you didn't get her, if you didn't get their contact info, they put it in the chat.
Oh, I
Yeah.
got it. Don't you worry.
Okay, fantastic. So Hannah, you may be getting some DMs and some follows and some likes and emails.
Yes.
But all jokes aside, that's the point, right? And
Hmm.
so if you didn't know, there's two new people who work somewhere within that space whom you could, get more information and ideas from. And so definitely connect with Hannah and Emma and the rest of the IBO people as you and your colleagues at NYC Plan continue to, explore the library funding space.
Yes, I
Yeah,
absolutely
we have
will.
an analyst that just focuses on libraries and the arts. So yeah, just shoot me an email so we can be in touch too.
There we go.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that presentation, Mandy. We're moving on in our agenda to the continued planning for the 2026 annual Youth Services Fair. Name change. Nearly 20 years as a youth conference, but for a little clarity, and I don't know, in the 21st century, we're doing the Youth Resources Fair. Now it's not rolling off the tongue, but I want to again, invite you guys to stay. So you learn we have a resource fair that CB14 hosts every year, and that's coming up in March. So we're in prelim, but getting towards past lim planning phases. And yeah, so you're welcome to stay and learn more about it, or contact the office if you want to be there. But yeah, so that's where we're going now. Miss Ornella, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, I don't think everyone has ever called me Miss Ornella. But I'll take it, Eric. All right. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year for those that came on a little later from the intro. As Eric stated, we're going to jump right into youth conference planning. We had some pre-planning back in November. And as promised, we was going to start the year off ready to go. So I'm going to share my screen, but just to orient everyone, we're going to spend about maybe 5 to 8 minutes just going through some like key logistics of the youth conference. And this is not like solidified. This is a space for us to talk, make any adjustments as needed, but we want to make sure everyone is clear on like the flow of the fair, the resource fair. I keep saying conference too, Eric. And then after that, we're gonna move into action items, like what are the things that must happen, and when, and then making sure that the members of this committee know that they have a stake in the conference happening and getting people to sign up on some of the action items so we have a clear plan moving ahead, and we could get the ball rolling. So let me share my screen. Me and WebEx are not friends in this area, y'all, so give me a second. Hold on a second, window. All right. It is not in the allow access. It is not in the prettiest format. So apologize. But is everyone able to see like a Google Doc on their screen? Yeah, perfect. All right. So I always like to start us off with the purpose of the resource fair. So just like the conference, just a different name change. The purpose is connecting. One second. Oh no, my page. I can't see none of my things on WebEx now. One second, y'all. Okay. The purpose of the resource fair is connecting youth to pathways and opportunities that support job and career development, skill building, and essential resources across our district, or I would say just our city in general. So I thought about like what are the things we actually want to accomplish? What are some like measurable metrics we want to start aiming towards meeting through the execution of this event? So with those, these are not solidified. I like brainstorm some of them. So if any, I'm going to read through the objectives and then I want to pause and let's talk through like which ones make sense and which ones are like, yeah, nah, I'm not with you on that. So the first is at least 20 plus organizations, employers, or workforce partners participate. I think we hit that on a regular anyways, but just putting it here as like a metric to measure. And then I have 10 plus organizations representing like mental health, housing, legal, food access, education. I will put etc., but I was trying to think of all the different resources youth would need. But just making sure that there's organizations that represent those needs. Then we have at least 60% of youth attendees report learning about at least one job, internship, or career pathway during their time there. At least 75% of youth who are surveyed feel that the fair reflected their interests and needs. I think that was major because we want to make sure we're continuing to meet the needs of the youth that show up. And then the next is 50% of youth identify at least one skill building resource they can consider engaging in. So whether it's like one of financial literacy, digital skills, resources, like from any of the organizations there, they identified something they can engage with beyond the resource fair. And then 50% of youth report discovering at least one support resource they were unaware of before. And then last but not least, at least 70% of youth attendees who participated in the mock interviews report an increased confidence in that specific skill. So again, this was me just brainstorming tied to the purpose. I am not tied to these. I want to make sure that everyone that's part of the planning feels confident in these metrics and that it makes sense for what we're trying to accomplish. So I'm going to pause there. I want to give the floor to you guys. Feedback, thoughts, concerns, comments on the objectives and goals that are listed. And I cannot see if anyone has their hands up. Okay, here we go. All right, I see Nikki.
I think they're really clear objectives, right? Because they're all observable, super specific. The only thing I would say is for the ones that involve, and they're all things that I think the fair already does, right? And that's awesome. And it's just a matter of quantifying that. The only thing I would say is for the ones where we involve surveying somebody, right? Like I know from my own experience how hard it is to get youth to answer something. So, and I know it's 75% of youth survey, meaning of the people who answer it. I just want to suggest like an interesting, there are some things that we could do in order to collect that data that either would be an interesting volunteer role at the event, right? To like try and survey people like as they're leaving, be like, hey, like I'll give you a cookie if you just answer my questions. Is that unethical? I'm not sure, but like that could be an interesting volunteer role. And then I think, like for the one about the mock interviews, just at the end of the interview, actually having the person on the spot be like, from 1 to 5, how much more confident do you feel or something? So I think they're great goals. It's just tricky sometimes to gather meaningful survey feedback. And so it'd be cool to think of non-email or electronic surveys to capture that data.
I'm happy you brought up that nuance. When we go down to the volunteer roles, that I have collecting survey and feedback as one of the volunteer positions. So good catch, Nikki.
No, and it appears to be my night to say dumb things during a committee meeting. So I'm sorry for anticipating that.
Nothing about that was dumb. That was good feedback. I'm just writing that down so I don't forget. Okay, boom. 4 surveys. Okay. I can't anyone else feedbacks, thoughts, anything that you think like needs tweaking, the numbers are off. Again, these are like arbitrary. I just came up with them based on what I've seen the previous conference done, what we say the purpose is. So these can all be adjusted or moved or something added.
My question, really, I guess, I was thinking, Sean, Carl, you guys have done. There's been survey exit data that's come out in the past. Has it been? How did you guys collect that data? Were you surveying parents or kids, or there's been? I know there's some exit data from previous ones. I'm curious.
Usually, as Nikki articulated and Ornella anticipated, that it's on the spot, it's at the event, and usually if we have you know, a screen for them to do it right there on the spot, or even paper, or even asking people and checking off their answers for them. We've done all those ways. So, but yeah, on the spot at the event has been the most successful. And then Nikki's suggestion that you make sure that it's we'll add it onto the script for the mock interviews so that it's in real time there. And then that's just automatic.
Yeah. You said screen paper and just like have people fill it out too, you said, right, Sean?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then I think Susan has her hand up. Susan, did you have a question, comment?
Unmute. Sorry, good evening all. I said I worked with the mock interviews last year, and I just wanted to add something to encourage the students not to think it's over with this, interview, that they need to continue after the interview to build, a file. What are your interests? Create a little pitch of them, like a 2-minute pitch. What do you want to do? If you're going to go for an interview, how do you represent yourself? What do you want the person to know? You know, I'm a resume, getting a resume together. I can't remember if we have a session on that, but all of those things, the mock interview is just one part of the process of readying themselves for a job interview or an internship, whatever it is, that this is just the beginning and that they have to, keep going at it. And, one of the things that they can do, they're always on their phones. They can practice a little pitch on, how do I explain who I am, or why do I want this job or this position or something. I think that would be helpful. They can do that with pairs.
Yeah. That's good feedback. I wrote that down, Susan, for when we get down to the mock interview section of maybe like providing them a list of things to do after the mock interview, or post there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. No, thank you. I see Ahmad, and then we'll move on after. Go ahead, Ahmad. All you.
I understand we already had this discussion again, but since you have written question mark next to the date about the does this need to be changed, so that's why I'm just giving this suggestion again. March 12th will be Ramadan, and doing youth conference in Ramadan means that all the Muslim youth, they will be excluded. No one will be coming to attend the youth event in Ramadan. So that is something, if it is possible, I know like we are just like 2 months away, so if it is possible it can be
Yeah.
moved.
I'm happy to
That
help
will be the
address that,
only way.
Shabir, because
Otherwise,
it's during Ramadan probably more years than it's not during Ramadan. And because Ramadan is a month-long holiday, it's not on an Eid, and it was set in consultation with the supporting organization that's also Muslim-led and Muslim-served. We have had a large turnout from the Muslim community, even during Ramadan, because it's, from 4 to 7, so you can come from 4 to 5 and then be home. And unfortunately, it's just it's not something we can avoid because it has to take place after the SYEP applications have been released, but before the deadline is over. And that's why it's always been timed this way for the past 20 years. But I hear
okay,
you, I understand, I'm not being insensitive to it, but I'm just explaining why it's scheduled during the holiday.
okay, sounds good. Actually, I was not involved in the initially. I think I was not a board member at that time. I was not involved in the initial time when the date was set. So that's why I just wanted to bring it up. And since there was a question mark right now, so I just thought about bringing it up. Okay, thank you for
Yes.
listening.
Yeah, it's a
Question
good
mark was
question mark because it's the wrong day. I believe it's March 11th is what we've put in everything. It's Wednesday, March 11th is what we've booked with the Y.
okay. I have an email that says the 12th. That's so weird. Okay. I have put the question mark because other members had came up to me about that same concern. But you were saying, oh, that might be what it is, Sean. Um, you're saying, Sean, that it's not possible to make adjustment to the date at this time, right? Yeah,
I
I think
mean,
I'm reading your lips right.
I wouldn't do it, but you're the board. This is your committee. You want to do something different and not hook it into SYEP and start a new way of doing it, then I would yield to you.
Um, I'm just one person on the board. I am always just me as like values. I'm always trying to be inclusive. So if we do feel like this is something
Oh
that's
no,
going to like, huh?
we're I'm also always trying to be inclusive, and I've worked with this community. I don't know that.
No, Sean, that wasn't a dig at you. That was speaking from an I statement because I'm gonna open it up to the entire board. I'm saying that I'm always open to making a shift if it's gonna promote increased inclusivity, but I want to turn it over to the board for their thought process if it makes sense to make a change at this point around the date. And again, that's not a dig to anyone. I just always speak from I statements. Apologies there.
Well, can I jump in again, please? I
Is
was
that a bump?
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
should be Sean just share with us. So if it has to do something with the SYEP funding and that project, then I think we should let it as it is, because I understand SYEP project has something to do with the youth and all that kind of stuff.
Quick question though, SYEP applications, am I wrong? It says right now that they end January 9th. Is that a mistake?
They don't end January 9th. They might open January 9th. They always end in March, often in early March. But our experience is that every single year they're extended.
Got
Um,
it. Okay.
so one of our major, people that we work with is, I mean, Copo is obviously, but Kojo also, and they have a big SYEP placement system. And so we did have this conversation. It's been brought to our attention like in previous years as well that it's fallen during Ramadan. And I know that we had sort of an internal conversation, which is why we did just like, triple check it with Copo. But yeah, SYEP usually opens in January and then it's a application that usually closes and literally every year they're like it closes March 1 and then it gets extended because kids are also bad at filling out applications in addition to surveys. Kids are lovely, but like they are also slow on that. So that's the timing on SYEP. And just sort of contextually, one of the big challenges is that there are not very many employment opportunities available for youth, like just in a straightforward, like getting employers there. So in terms of what kind of employment opportunities, it's usually SYEP, or potentially even, summer internships that are not SYEP. And often the sort of timeline on those is a little earlier. And then just one other thing is that in some years, and maybe we can also try and develop this year, is having, part of the CUNY system there.
Mhm.
And sort of what applications, what the rolling applications for CUNY schools, we would, they do, I think there's priority in February, but a lot of those applications are open a little later on. And so if it's something where we can, introduce kids to different CUNY schools, um, that as well.
Um, this is Susan. My school, City Tech, was there last year, and I will try again to have them come um at the next. I'll get on that next week to see, and maybe
Wonderful.
some more information.
Yep. I wrote that down as well and make sure that's part of we keep track of that. I know that there's a few hands up. I have Asma and then I think Nikki you put I don't know if that's from before. If not, you're right after Asma again.
Hi, I hope everybody can hear me.
We can.
Happy New Year's, first of all, to everybody. Sorry, I know I logged in a little late, but I'm glad I got to listen to this portion at least. Thank you, Shabir, for bringing that up. I think it is important, but as Copo, we were in conversation about the date for quite a few years about this. And we've always had, I think personally, when I've attended also, we've seen a lot of Muslim students come and attend the conference, and it's been a great turnout. I think this year, if possible, just to be more creative and just thinking outside the boxes, maybe offer Ramadan boxes, like iftar boxes, for those students, or just generally for the entire participants who are in attendance. I think, and I will gladly discuss that with my CEO. If we can sponsor that, just again, like wanting obviously the Muslim community and students to participate, and just thinking what might be attractive for them as well. It is the month of giving and doing things out of charity, so I think that's one way of Shabir, maybe you and I can discuss on that, on how we can work together to connect with different Muslim schools to come out to this event as well, who are in the district. Just my 2 cents there about that, so thank you.
Okay, sounds good. We will discuss that. Sounds good, Asma. We will talk about that. Okay, thank you.
And
I
then,
had my hand up.
yep, Nikki.
Yeah, I want to,
Nikki, I
of
didn't know if
course,
you were-
yeah, no, I want to, of course, defer to uh, my fellow Muslim board members, and who can speak to how Ramadan affects life. I think maybe just like a good rule of thumb that we can use when we're planning board events, right, is to look at the New York City Public Schools calendar for things that are like really a date when we should not be doing stuff. Although obviously there's always going to be things that fall outside of that. Just as like, I know I am positive every single person on the board wants to be inclusive, and that can just be like a really solid rule of thumb. So and then my other comment, the 2 other comments, and again, I'm not Muslim, I defer to my Muslim fellow board members, is just like iftar time, like Asma said. Just if that would be the only thing I would think of. I'm not so great at figuring out when iftar is from looking at charts and everything like that, but that might be the only thing we'd want to take into consideration in terms of timing. But then I did want to make a comment. I think this is going to be my 8th year going to conferences, and I think the SYEP application makes a big difference. I feel like, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, this is my night for saying dumb stuff or just being demented, but like I feel like there was one year where like somehow the timing, like we really get quite a lot of foot traffic and I think engagement by centering this around the SYEP process or making that a part of it. So I do feel it's important enough, even though it's not ideal to have it during a major religious period. So that just my 2 cents as someone who's participated in this event for a number of years.
Okay, thank you, Nikki.
Or no, sorry, I'll just comment with that timing. So it is different with different Muslims. And so that's why I'm saying, I mean, 4 to 7 does, it falls between the timings of everybody breaking their fast, of like if it's going to be 4:30, 4:45, someone's breaking at 5, 5:30, depending on the sundown and like, what their beliefs are. So with that said, I think just having I really think just having iftar boxes available would be really helpful. And just, being in the term we're using, inclusive, right? So I think just being mindful on that too.
Yeah. I don't see, I don't see any other hands up. Oh wait, I lied. Eric.
I did. It was mine. Asma, I'm interested in connecting with you about the iftar boxes because last year uh, we reached out to Flatbush Food Co-op to get snacks for the event as well. So I'll touch base with you as we're thinking about the kind of snacks and things that could be available.
Absolutely.
Great.
So based on what I've heard in conversation so far and not seeing any other hands, it looks like it makes sense that we're kind of all aligned towards keeping the date March 11th, not 12, y'all, 11th, and the time 4 to 7, and getting creative around how we can make it attractive for those that are celebrating Ramadan during that time to still participate. And some of those options might be to provide in boxes for those that will be breaking fast at that time. And yes, so we'll add that as like part of the plan in and circle back to see if that's something we can do. But if I'm reading the room right, it looks like March 11th feels good for everybody, right? And then one caveat, the SYEP applications haven't gone out yet. The site has like an error on it. So it does seem like it still is the same timeline around maybe still being open when our date of March 11th is set for. Let's keep it moving, y'all. All right, and then I'm just gonna quickly run through these other pieces. The venue, as you guys know, is Flatbush YMCA, which is located on Flatbush Avenue. And then marketing plan, the flyer will be attached once completed, but the goal from what we talked about in pre-planning is getting physical flyers posted in hotspots compared to we saw more traction the years when we did a better job of like physical visible flyers. And then thinking through social media is not something that I'm necessarily tied to, but maybe using it as an addition, no piece of like sharing or collaborating with our elected officials, other LE, other education agencies, our CBOs, schools and colleges to like have to get the flyer supported at a wider reach for those that don't see it within our district. I think I recall Sean also saying because we partnered with I think like we're partnering with Farrah Lewis's office that we can go a little bit outside of our district. So getting like a wider reach using social media to do that. And then email plan as usual, making sure that we follow a cadence of sending out blast aligned to headed leading up to the event. Um, Eric, I'll turn this part over to you, the school outreach plan.
Oh, okay. So one of the this all right, hold on, let me get my notes. Yeah, there's a couple of like volunteer kind of needs that the office is talking about to help support them. Um, and I spoke with Sarah and Sean today. So a couple of roles. So just think about these. I know you just mentioned the school one, but I'm just gonna mention them. So having like a poster.
1 sec, Eric.
Yeah.
Volunteers are going to be below. Were you able to talk about like your plan and game plan for school outreach to make
Uh,
sure we reach more schools
okay.
this?
All
Yeah.
right. Sure. So we're going to need a volunteer captain to sort of take charge of the high touch connection with the school. So we have a list that's been building over the years that we'll blast out to, but we want to engage directly, board members directly with the right contact person. Some of our contacts at some of the schools have moved on or move on, year to year, you get like a different guidance counselor, somebody. So the plan is to, after this meeting, right, starting tomorrow, next week, reach out to principal and guidance counselor and find out, and parent coordinator at each of our schools, and make sure we can find somebody there to directly send information to. Basically ask them to help us identify somebody who would distribute the information. So we have a full list, and if people are interested in doing that outreach, I'm going to volunteer. We're not to the volunteers yet, but I volunteer as tribute to help lead the charge and help coordinate that. So if there are people who are interested in doing the outreach to the school over the next week and a half, so we can, again, sometimes there's delays, they don't get back to us. So we get it out now. And by the time we get to our printing in February, where our posters come in and we're going to mail packages to the places, we want to make sure they're getting to somebody's hands who's going to put them up and do something with them, and they don't just get left in the teacher's lounge. So yeah, if anybody's interested in joining me on this teacher connection journey, school connection, please put your name in the chat, and I'll make sure we're coordinating.
Yep. I didn't want to keep moving. I think I see a hand. Is it Asma? Asma, do you have your hand up about something that?
Yes,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
was just going to add on there. I think for the schools, since we are expanding a little bit outside of the district, if I mean, from COPA, what I can do is I can send it out to the Islamic schools that we have connections with. to see how we can have those students participate as well, and see, maybe talk about busing with them as well. Again, that's something that we can look into. And I think previously, I had mentioned about sharing the flyer on, this is something the community board members, if possible, wherever they're working, on their social media platforms. Just a suggestion I had made, I think, a couple of months ago. So,
Yes. I am happy that you brought up that point. I moved past it, but yes, when it's on social media, the ask of board members and the committee members is to share it. We all have different networks, so the more we share it, the greater the reach and the wider the reach. But on that same caveat, the team, the main team, obviously the entire board is going to support this, and we have like partners and things like that, but the main team that's going to make this happen are the people on this call, the people a part of youth service education libraries committee. I just listed the committee members names here. It is not inclusive of the entire board, but we are also asking and wanting the entire board to participate in this happening. And I listed the committee members above the district office because this is our event, and we do need to take a bigger stake at like completing some of the tasks. And this is just like feedback from years and like reflection from years. I can speak from last year. I feel like the district office did a lot, and they are a smaller team than us, and they have other day-to-day tasks that they have to complete. So it is imperative that as we move through and we go to the volunteer section, that we all step up. We volunteer to make this event happen at a high level, and we all step up to make sure it happen at a high level, and that we complete tasks that we identify something and state that we're going to do. Kind of to Eric's point, so some of the things that we need volunteers for pre-event is flyer design. We'll get to that at the end. It's going to be the last action item before we close out. Posting physical posters, making calls to schools, like Eric named, and then the next list of volunteers are going to be things for during the event. So setup crew, sign-in table, cleanup crew, the feedback collection, mock interview transitions, snack table. So we do need quite a few people for different things prior to the event, and then also, of course, during the event. And then really quickly, just last part is during the event, envisioning, as if you've been to the youth conference now, resource fair, it's going to be tabled, lined in rows, and organizations can select any table they prefer upon arrival. The once we have a confirmed list of participating organizations, we'll make a quick poster with all the orgs that will be in the youth lounge area. It's just an idea. Some feedback that came back in previous surveys was that youth were asking for like a space where they can like complete applications, fill out applications, and then thinking about that, we're going to ask them to complete a survey, and then scavenger hunt, which I'll get to in a second. Just creating a space that they can be able to do that and move throughout that space. But we'll have the flyer for the orgs in that space, and then at the welcome table. Mock interviews. Just wanted to confirm, Sean, let me know if there's a good number for this. I didn't want to put a random number that didn't make sense. What is like the ideal number of volunteers needed for the interviews throughout that you've seen like as best practice?
I think it's good to have 4 to 5 people in the room at any given time. So it sort of depends on how long each person is staying. But I'm gonna give you a number because you asked me for a number. 10 to 12. 10 to
Overall,
12.
right? Yeah.
15 doesn't hurt, but 10 to 12.
All right.
And I'll
Let's aim
count
for
them up from
15.
last year, and I'll make sure that I didn't totally make that up, but I think that's ballpark what we've had.
Okay. That makes sense. And then timing for the interviews. How long does each interview typically run?
It depended on how engaged the interviewee was. And so they could be anywhere from 10 minutes on the shorter side to 20 minutes.
Got it. Okay, that is good information because I'll update this document here. So as we get volunteers, they can sign up for slots for the interviews that are, I think, let's lean to like the higher end, 20 minutes at a time. And then that way we could get more rounds in. throughout the conference. Let's see, 20 minutes. Okay. All right. Now to the action piece, y'all. So, Carissa, after the November call, reached out to me to volunteer to make the flyer. I was doing some outreach in December to get some insight and doing some research around like youth needs. She is working on the flyer. Her deadline is January 15th. But she did have some questions. She couldn't make the call tonight. She wanted to know, do we have pictures from past years that we can use? And then any logos that needs to be added, like any sponsors. So I had, oh, go ahead, Sean. I think I see you talking.
Well, we can check in with Sarah on this because there's been no communication from that offer. The office has already put some work into redesigning the flyer as well. So we can reach out to her tomorrow and just give her what the templates we have. And I thought we were going to turn it around by the 12th, but Sarah, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that with the flyer, one of the tricky things is that we need to have the same graphic that then can be used in multiple different contexts. So there is a large printed flyer, a small printed flyer, a like digital graphic that goes, in the emails and that people can post on social media. Then a version goes on the link kiosks, and also just regarding that. So what we'll do is that, if you've walked around the district, you might have seen that our meeting announcements gets posted on the link kiosks that are within the district. Because we are partnering with the two of the council members, we'll have these on the ones in the district, but also in their district. So that's sort of like the extra space.
Mhm.
I can talk to Carissa tomorrow at some point about this. And then the other thing is because we do them in multiple languages, the um, flyer itself needs to be kind of plain enough that we can just sort of easily plug and play when we do the translations. So I'm happy to talk to Carissa tomorrow, maybe, if she's available, or very early next week. And maybe we can just kind of zhuzh up the um yeah, I guess I worry about design by committee because it just means that everything is gets a little bit more challenging, but I let me just talk to Carissa. I can also share screen now if you want, sort of in terms of, and the flyer is very wordy. But maybe I'll just, yeah. Give me one sec.
I can stop
Can
sharing
I
so you can share.
can I can I jump in on the flyer?
Go ahead, Ahmad. And Sarah, you should be able to share now. I stopped sharing.
Yeah, I have a full-time designer, so if you need my help, I can give you the flyer tomorrow. I have a full-time designer. So let me know. I'm happy to help. Just let
Thanks, I appreciate that. We can talk tomorrow as well. I'll shoot an email to Carissa in the morning. I'm literally just waiting for Canva to load because it's decided to be very slow and I didn't have it pulled up already. But while I'm talking, I'll also say something about social media, which is what would maybe be helpful in terms of social media is when I used to do search engine optimization in a random job. When we had to do social media, we would basically have a spreadsheet. And so, like, if people want to come up with like posts that we can make and stuff like that, and then put them in a spreadsheet, and then that can be transmitted to Patricia, and Patricia can do the actual posting, and then folks can repost them. That would be more helpful than necessarily like turning over the keys to our social media accounts, just because we, there's privacy concerns, and what we can say on a government website is something to be aware of. So give me Just one second. Um,
And while we're
and
waiting,
we'll
can I jump in too to add to what Sarah just said? She's alluding to, I mean, the additional help from board members and more investment of time and energy from board members is most welcome and appreciated. But remember that there's a lot of systems already in place in the office, so reinventing wheels wouldn't be the most efficient use of anyone's time. So be in touch with the office if there's ideas or ways you're going to do things. We might already have a template for it. Heck, we may have already done it. So I think it's the communication that's key. To come to a meeting and then a month later show up and say you're still doing something isn't going to work. We need to, if you're going to do something, we need to be in touch with the office in the process of it. And then also, I was going to say this earlier, we're not limited to the schools in our district. That's come up twice in this conversation. We do kind of more aggressive or more active engagement with the schools we're already in touch with because they are in the district, but there is nothing keeping us from expanding our reach citywide and even then some.
we think we once had a school from Philadelphia show up, which was they were like, we'd love to. So yeah. Here is a, listen, graphic design is not my passion, but this is a flyer. We just make sure that we have all of the relevant information about the dates, times, and the logos, and the appropriate hat tips to our sponsoring organizations, which in this time is Copo, the council members, and the YMCA. Nikki, I see your message, but do me a favor and just send it in an email to the office because I will not be able to capture
Oh no,
all of that.
all
So,
I said is I like your flyer, and that the only
okay.
thing you should do is make the last line on the thing, just make it super tiny, like have the font size, and voila, your poster is perfect. You have a career in graphic design.
Oh,
Congratulations,
my mother, the
But
graphic
that's my
designer, will
vote.
be
It's
so
like you have
pleased.
it, like clearly
Yeah,
it's here and ready. I would say let's just not reinvent the wheel per Sean's comment.
yeah.
Okay.
Can I stop sharing my screen?
Absolutely.
Just great.
Okay. Um, Thank you for sharing, Sarah. We'll keep going through the timeline, and I meant to say this before the timeline. The dates here are also arbitrary, so if there's something that we need to tweak, like, hey, we need this maybe sooner, we need this, that doesn't make sense. If this thing is not done, we can make those adjustments. But I did want to make this caveat because in make the statement in pre-planning, we talked, it's not necessarily reinventing the wheel. We talked about looking at past and making adjustments, and one of the adjustments was the flyer that we talked about. So that's why that came up, and we had committee members volunteer that they would be willing to do it. So it's not necessarily reinventing the wheel because as an educator, I am not aligned to reinventing the wheel, but it is just taking feedback from the past and improving upon it. So that just saying that so that that's out there. But let's keep moving through the timeline. As we go through the timeline, take a close eye at the dates, y'all, and tell me if anything doesn't make sense timing wise. So if the flyer is finished on the 15th, was thinking giving it a week. I don't know if that timeline is too aggressive for translating the flyer to different languages. And then I know there's a list of languages. I'm missing a few of them here. That it needs to be translated to match the languages needed with across our district as we post. So correct me if I'm wrong. Asking the office, are there volunteers? I know in the past we've asked this, but are there any needs for volunteers to translate to any specific languages?
We do Spanish, which we can do in the office because Patricia is a
Mm-hmm.
native Spanish speaker. We do Urdu, which Ozma has done in years past.
Okay.
And we do Haitian Creole, which Yvette Claire-Jean did last year, and may or may not be able to do again. I'll ask her.
Gotcha.
And we did have a similar 1 week sort of turnaround on translations. So
And
once,
Sasha too.
oh, and Sasha, sorry, and Russian. I forgot Russian. My
Yes.
apologies. And Sasha did Russian, which we really appreciated, and I did not mean to leave you out. And so normally what we do is we send out just plain text, and then we get the plain text back, and then there's, some time of me moving yes, we can include the day of the week. There's some of me moving like type around and sending it back to the translators just to make sure that reordering of things didn't mess up a meaning or anything like that. And then
Got you.
our goal is to have them to the printer by the last week in January so that we have the hard copies of them around February 1, which will mean that they will be, we'll start to mail them to schools on February 1. We'll have them available for board members to pick up on their own and post, and also to bring to the board meeting. And I know we've hammered this, but it is really important that people like sign up to pick them up. Last year we ended up with like 200 extra flyers, which
Yep.
was a lot of money, and you know, they're collecting dust. So just really making sure 1 year, which I thought was helpful, we can either or not do, we can sort of like divide up the district into
Yeah.
segments and say like, okay, you're responsible for, this part over by the Target, and you're responsible for over here by Coney Island. And we tend to make like unsurprisingly, a smaller number of the larger posters, and then just like 1,000 of the smaller posters, because those can be, left on coffee shop counters and just given out all over the place. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I updated the print flyer part to hard copies by February 1st, right? And then after that, oh, sorry, on the print, you don't need any assistance with printing. The office will handle printing.
Yeah, we use a print service. They're very good. Um, and they're not super expensive. So we're usually okay with that. And we, maybe use a little bit of our color paper as well. But I think it was a little, yeah, it's easy. We'll handle printing. Don't worry about that.
Sounds perfect. Then by January 26th, because translations will already be done, send event notice. This is digital, obviously, email, because we won't have the hard copies yet, to organizations and past mock interviewers. And hopefully the goal is to confirm their participation by February 6th. Does that sound like a feasible timeline? Or do you need do a longer runway for confirmation of participants?
Do you mean the organizations or the?
Yeah, the organizations
The
that will be participating.
organizations so maybe I'll just say this as well. So in terms of actually, we have a couple of different systems that we use in terms of outreach. We have the MailChimp, which has 3 sub mailings within it. I know everyone's thrilled by this information. So there's a mailing list in that, which is youth and parents. So that's anybody who just like signs up for the mailing list or who attended in years past. It's the biggest one. We have a secondary one that is schools, and that is way beyond. That's like, again, any teacher or guidance counselor or whoever who signs up whose school. And then we have organizations, and that's like a big organizational list. We then do targeted outreach in for both organizations and schools. So we have a list that we put together from past participants, organizational participants, as well as anyone who's presented to this committee. And there's a letter, like a specific letter that goes out to those organizations. In the past years, we've had about 50 organizations. Those organizations are a mix of like resource providers, city agencies, recruiters, SYEP related, a lot of health organizations, always very popular. And we did have, I don't remember the date that we said off the top of our heads.
I think, Sarah, that we said February 13th or the 16th.
Okay.
The organization invites are going out next week. So we don't wait for the flyers or anything for the organizations. Those invitations will go out next week, and then follow up almost almost weekly thereafter. But they roll in pretty quickly, and we try to set a deadline about about a month ahead, and then that third week we'll still get more, and we usually take them up all the way to the very end. Even though we say there's a deadline, we don't tend to enforce it.
What do you normally say the deadline, the end of the month, you said, Sean?
I think Sarah, did we say I don't know, it was, we debated it for so long in the office, I forget who won the debate. Did we say maybe we said the 20th, like the third week of February, or the 16th, the beginning of the third week of February? I did the draft, I don't remember what I put in there. Do you remember, Sarah? We're doing the event on March 11th. We're going to try to close registration, you know, 3 weeks before. So that's like the 18th.
Do we want to round out at 20th and give them end of the week? Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what we landed on. But it's not real.
Right. I know. Just something to play with, just to have. And then Sarah said this, we'll send out flyers February 1st. If flyers are sent out, given some time for them to arrive at schools, we'll call schools to confirm that they received the flyers, they've posted it, and confirm that they've shared with their students and families on February 9th, between February 9th to February 20th. I might make that that window a little shorter, but was looking to see, I know people started writing in the chat, but this is the opportunity for anyone who wants to help out with making calls. The calls were specifically to schools across our district. We distribute, we divide up the list amongst the volunteers, so the more the less calls you have to make. And we'll provide the contact list, which is already created. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing that. And then call scripts as well once volunteers are confirmed. So I know Eric started taking on some names, but if you are interested in being one of the people who just calls to confirm that they received the flyers, that they've shared it with their students and families, and you haven't done so yet, please just drop your name in the chat saying that you would like to be a call volunteer.
That's right. I'm taking names. I do see, it looks like, or no, Susan has her hand up. I'm not sure, Susan, if that's new, but
Susan, did you have your hand up? Oh, maybe not. Might have been from before. So again, keep putting your names in if you're interested in that. And then the last part for this call is going to be to post flyers in the district. So I started thinking through hotspots, obviously Cortelia Road, Church Ave, Flatbush Ave, Coney Island Avenue. And then someone had brought up in the pre-planning meeting to also post around like school, like hotspots, like school hubs. So that is also an option. I kind of like Sarah's idea of like divvying up the district and then doing it that way. So at this point, what we're just looking for is who would be willing to do the posting of flyers. And I'll update these dates to match what Sarah said. So if you're interested in hanging up flyers, throw your name in, and we'll give the list of locations. All right, I see Nikki, I see Sasha. There we go, y'all. And then we'll open this up obviously to the entire board when we have our meeting on Monday, but you guys get first dibs on the volunteer positions hot off the press.
I think it should be competition. Who puts up the most flyers wins, obviously, the big prize.
I don't know what that big prize is, y'all, so don't come looking for me.
It's recognition and celebration.
And then just we are at 8:30 and I want to be cautious of everyone's time, so we're going to wrap up now. But just the last two things on here is once everyone has volunteered and we confirm the day event volunteers, which will happen by February 19th, we're going to do a quick like training info session. It can be virtual or in the CB14 office. And then that will be on March 5th, which is a week prior to the event, so that everyone can ask like any final questions. Everyone is situated and ready to go for the event the following week, just so that everybody has that. All right. I don't want to hold people beyond time. We are at 8:31, So if anyone has any final questions, you guys can reach out to me or stay on. But if you have to run, please go ahead and run. We are going to adjourn the meeting at this time. And then if anyone has any questions, I'll stay back a couple minutes, seconds to answer any final questions.
I
And
do have a
yes, I still see volunteer stuff going up in the chat.
I do have a
Good
bit of
night.
new business, fourth agenda item. Just a quick announcement. Somebody just sent me this message. The chancellor is doing a town hall at PS 217 on Thursday,
Hey.
February 12th at 6:30. So we're gonna get the chancellor down the block. Yeah, so mark that in your calendars. Thursday, February 12th, 6:30 to 7:30. The new chancellor, Kamar Samuels, will be in our district.
Thanks,
Good
folks. Thanks for
evening.
sharing.